it was just to be suitable for exciting for learning and for student empowerment. And so we spent about a year and a half doing some R&D and trying to figure out how could this work for K-12 teachers, everyday teachers who aren't entrepreneurs, don't have certificates in entrepreneurial education. And where that landed us was on an e-commerce site. And now we can jump to the next slide. Should I come up with like a hand motion? I am. Well, that's not going to work. You may not be looking at my chugga chugga. I digress. So we've been doing this work for now. We've been running student-run businesses in classrooms in partnership with teachers and students for over 5 years. We call these businesses education corporations, or EdCorps for short. And it's a really simple process because we wanted to create a way that any classroom could integrate the entrepreneurial process into the learning that they were already doing, or the projects that they were interested in, and that it could be malleable. So just from a snapshot, and this is for those who might be interested in kind of like learning more and following up, all of our classes receive seed funding on the front end. When you apply, you receive seed funding, access to our e-commerce platform, and resources to build your business. And those resources are curricular resources that help students kind of navigate the entrepreneurial learning process while also diving into more integrated topics, social emotional learning and community-based learning opportunities. As they build their business, students turn that learning into a product or service. And so we work with second grade classes that run seed shops and CTE classes that run furniture shops. And it's really up to the students to figure out the things that they're passionate about and how they turn that thing into a product or a service. As they do that, obviously they learn these amazing skills, right? They have the opportunity to get their work out into the world. They understand the entrepreneurial mindset. They develop that entrepreneurial mindset and skill set. And so often they're developing really real world creative problem solving skills because, as you can imagine, it doesn't always go well. And we get that question from teachers a lot, like, what if it breaks? What if they don't make any money? What if things fall apart? And, honestly, for us, that's an ideal situation because when things fall apart, students have to figure out how to put it back together. And when they have a vested interest in something that's theirs, something that they're building, we've watched them rise to the occasion time after time. And at the end of it all, students own all the profits that they make. So they can determine what they want to do with it, and they can either put it back into their business, they can put it back into their classroom or school, or they can donate it to causes that they care about. And a vast majority of our students do a combination of the three. You can jump to the next slide. And just to give you kind of a snapshot of what that's looked like, over $330,000 has been made by classes and has gone back to their classrooms and community causes. Over 240 organizations that students have supported. It's been over 35,000 students that have participated in some student-run business in over 500 businesses. And sometimes those businesses start new every year. Sometimes, there are 6 students. Sometimes there are 100 students. Our job wasn't to tell educators necessarily what it needed to look like, but to build a space and build a tool that made it happen. And ultimately, this idea of I feel more confident executing on my ideas is really the work that we're doing here, is equipping young people, giving them the experiences to understand the skill sets that they have and giving them the opportunity to practice those over and over again. And so now I'm going to transition to my friend Josh because he's had this opportunity. I'm just going to take a little break because I talk fast and sometimes I sweat indoors because of it, like I really wind myself. Okay, so we can drop the screen share. Elliot, your face came right up on the screen. That was such a delight. Okay, that was like a nice calming moment for me. So now we're gonna invite Josh. He goes like this always. He's always telling me to talk slower. Oh, so my friend Josh is here. Josh is the co-founder of GimKit. He's also a Big Picture alumni from Gibson Eck up in Seattle. And I had the opportunity to work with Josh a few years ago as a group of students there were working with us to start a student-run business. And as a result of that, I saw just recently a tweet where he posted, the whiteboard, and he said, this was the day in class where the idea for GimKit was born. And I think he's a year or two out of high school. Josh, you'll have to unmute yourself in a moment and tell me. But as since kind of the experience and leaving school, he's started another company, and we invited him here today just to talk about what that's looked like, what's that felt like for him, the learning that's been involved. And so, Josh, thank you so much time to share with me today. I'm hoping you could just tell us a little bit more about GimKit, what GimKit is, so you could share a little with the team what GimKit is and why you started it.
Yeah, thanks, Elise. Also, I see Natalie somewhere here in this call. So, hey, Natalie. Natalie was in my advisor, Ian. Well, congratulations on graduating. Sure. So let's see. My story with starting GimKit starts back with ninth grade. And in ninth grade, there wasn't a big picture school in my district yet. So I went to a traditional high school. And common with a lot of students that attend big picture schools, they just weren't finding their needs met with traditional school. And I was the same way. I was typically pretty unengaged, but one of the times where I was pretty engaged was when we played games in class. So games like Kahoot and Quizlet Live, if you've heard of them, I play those in French class and science class. And when I played those games in class, I was generally engaged and had fun in class. So then I start at my big picture learning school. I started going there my sophomore year, and I kind of had just started that year learning how to become a software engineer. Just started learning how to code, and I spent my entire first part of that year, for the most part, learning how to code. And I was kind of getting better and better at it. My internship was surrounding that, and throughout the year, I had done a good amount of smaller projects surrounding coding. And then towards the end of the year, I discovered Real World Scholars, and my friends and I started a little business with Real World Scholars where we did basically some marketing for local businesses. And it was, I doubt it's probably the way that most Real World Scholars businesses go, but it was basically just like found out that we gotten approved for the seed funding and went on the morning announcements before, I think it was like spring break. And I was like, hey, if anyone wants to try starting a business, come meet in this room. And turns out basically just my friends joined me. And we did that for a bit. And then I was kind of urging the need to go back to engineering. And so I was wrapping up my sophomore year, and I really liked going through this business process, but also wanted to go back to learning how to become a better engineer. So I thought, okay, what if I could transition the two? And so I decided to make some sort of product, and I could basically sell this software product. And when I thought about what I would actually want to make, I thought back to traditional school, where I loved using games like Kahoot and Quizlet Live. And I thought, hey, what if I made a game of my own? And so that's how it started. And so I basically spent the last part of my sophomore year, and then the summer and the first part of my junior year making the thing. And then I published it, and quickly found a mentor who's been super helpful. And then it was kind of like a school project, somewhat of a business, and then it kind of just grew naturally over time. And by the time I graduated, it was in a place where I was able to work on it after high school. So that's what I work on now. I'm very fortunate to be able to do that, and I've been out of high school for a year now. So I just graduated last year, and that's the quick overview of me.
It's pretty good. So, okay, you said engineering. You said you're running a business offering marketing services. And now you're like, running a business as an entrepreneur. That's like a, kind of a jack of all trades, or maybe just a lot of different specialties that you're carrying around. Do you identify as an entrepreneur, or are there one of these things that you identify with more than others, or and do you identify with being an entrepreneur just in general?
I mean, I wouldn't say, like, when people ask me what I do, I don't really ever use that word. I do fit the definition of that to some extent. But I don't think about it all too much. I mean, it doesn't matter too much if I say I am or I'm not. But yes, I guess according to the definition of entrepreneur, I guess I do fit that. But I see it more as creating stuff.
I love that response, because I think so often entrepreneurship can be a lot of ego. It's not, sometimes when we're looking to solve problems, it's less about the problem and it's more about ourselves. And, it's, while ego is not necessarily a bad thing, sometimes I think it can be a bit of a badge, one that finds a lot of identity. And I think it can be an identity that feels not very inclusive, right? One that feels inaccessible. And so I love that, you both don't identify and also kind of are walking the walk all the time. What have been, so like you, obviously every entrepreneurial learning journey is different, and kind of it's a lot of trial by error. What has that learning journey looked like for you?
I mean, it's like a combination of a lot of things. I definitely say very little of what kind of has helped me came from traditional school. I mean, it was certainly those skills that I learned in my first year at a big picture learning school that definitely helped me. So, I mean, one of the things I'm incredibly happy that I did was before I kind of started coding anything for GimKit, I spent about a month and a half, maybe 2 months, um, just interviewing students and teachers to figure out what they didn't like about the existing games. I wouldn't have done that if I was just completely doing it on my own, but my school had me go through the design thinking process. And that's the strongest example to me. I saw students at my school struggle all the time with like figuring out the importance of the design thinking process. And that was the most important example to me, is if I just went and built the thing that I thought I wanted, that's certainly part of it. But spending that time to interview and listen and learn more was super essential. So that entire first year, just shifting first year of my project-based learning school, my big picture school, those kinds of skills are, I think, truly what helped me, because I learned how to figure out what work I had to do on my own instead of someone else telling me what to do. I figured out multiple things going on at once. I figured out how to manage that work. I used a bunch of different tools to manage that. We had some that our school gave to us, some that I tried on my own. So I figured out how to do that. And then through my internship, I also learned how to work with others. I'd never done that before. There was like school projects, but it was very like, you do this and you do that. Not much of coming together. So I think tons, regardless of entrepreneurship and business building or not, tons of just the skills of collaboration and project-based learning come in pretty well into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, as a founder, I can definitely agree. I'm learning them the hard way, I feel like, all the time. And you and I talked a little bit about this the other day, as people who've started organizations and are trying to make them work. We're not in totally different boats. And some lessons are harder to learn than others. And I find myself often learning the same lessons over and over again. And so I was curious, what have been the hardest learned lessons for you?
Yeah, I actually don't know. I don't know what the hardest lesson is. That's a really hard question, but I certainly have learned. What's that?
Maybe a stubborn lesson.
Stubborn lesson. Yeah, but I certainly have learned quite a lot over the course of this entire journey. Yeah, Elise and I were speaking last Thursday, and I think kind of what I shared with her then still applies now. One lesson that has been quite difficult to overcome and kind of take into heart is becoming content with the idea that you don't have to build a giant or big thing in order to feel proud or happy with your work. I mean, I never kind of set out to kind of build something huge and giant anyway, but when it was growing pretty quickly, there was that lot of excitement. And like, if you talk to people about business, they'll typically ask for you to share things that show how impressive it is. So there's kind of that expectation there that you should build something like giant or big, when in reality, building a business is really awesome within itself. And like building a nice profitable restaurant is awesome. You don't have to build a huge giant thing. And so, I mean, specifically being in software, that's kind of the expectation. And I think overcoming that and just being content with like, we're basically 3 people right now. If kind of what my work looked like, the way I get to work and the kind of impact we have is the same 10 years from now, if we're still just 3 people doing the same kind of work, I'd still find myself very fulfilled. So I think it was overcoming the idea that, overcoming the idea of what success looks like told from the outside, and being happy with the work and how the work impacts others.
That feels like a sermon to me, honestly. Again, as a founder, it is a constant struggle to fight the need to be impressive and to put the ego back on the shelf. Because I think, one of the things that Josh, and I talked about was, especially as typically good students, that the temptation is there to continue, like to maybe just work a little bit harder, push yourself a little bit more, because maybe you could get it perfect. Maybe it could be just that. And that Steinbeck quote comes to mind for me now, that, we don't have to be perfect, we can be good. And so much of the entrepreneurial process for me has been being content with the good, so that we can keep moving, so that we can keep building, creating, and learning and connecting, so that we can make it better with times. We don't have to be perfect on day one. And it feels like one that I'm learning truly every day. And it's a process. So thank you so much for sharing with me, Josh. I'm going to pass the baton to, thank you, an Amazon package right now. What are the odds? I'm going to pass the baton to Michael. The last bit of this session, we're going to be doing breakouts. And so anyone who wants to stick around and talk with Josh and I, we can talk then.
Great. Thanks so much. So as Elise mentioned, and as I mentioned earlier, my name is Michael. I am the co-founder of EdSpace. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. EdSpace is a younger organization, younger than 6 years for sure, and sort of just coming into its own. So I appreciate Big Picture offering us the chance to be here. If we could jump quickly to, all right, did it already. So just a quick background on EdSpace. So before EdSpace, before we launched in beta in February, I had worked for Real World Scholars. And so while working there, as Elise mentioned, helping classrooms start and run businesses, we got to work with hundreds of teachers across the country. And one of the things that we began to recognize is that even though we were providing support, and even though these were some rock star educators doing really cool things, many of them were feeling incredibly burnt out. They were not sure if they wanted to come back to teaching again, and they felt unsupported. Many of them didn't have communities or didn't necessarily use technology to find others to get the support they needed. And so it turns out this is not just the hundreds of teachers that we supported at Real World Scholars, but that this is actually an epidemic, if you will, across the country of teachers feeling this way, of teachers feeling that their professional development opportunities don't support them, and many of whom leave the profession within years of starting. Upwards of 40 to 50% of all teachers in the United States who start leave by year 5, which are just devastating statistics. And so it didn't make sense to us as entrepreneurial people. It was heartbreaking to see many of the teachers that we loved sort of wanting to leave. And so we said, well, this cannot stand. And we put our brains together. We talked to hundreds of teachers, school administrators, counselors, technology folks, people in philanthropy, other folks in the education universe, to really explore what solutions were out there and what a solution could look like that would help provide teachers with the ability to get the support that they needed, get the inspiration, the ideas, and the camaraderie that they needed. And what we landed on was EdSpace, which is a social learning network. It's an online platform built for the world of education. So you can jump to the next slide, please. And you can kind of think about the technology as sitting at the intersection of a number of social media tools that are already out there, but none of these tools are really built for education specifically. And that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to create a place where teachers could trust that who was there and what they were there for are all in the realm of professionalism and of learning and of supporting students. And so we pulled different features from these platforms. We kind of brought in other features that teachers were craving, and we created EdSpace. So you can go to the next slide, please. And ultimately, EdSpace isn't just a technology tool. It's not just another kind of fancy app that you can access on your phone, although you can, and on web. But instead, really what it aims to do is support teachers doing the things that they want to do that they don't necessarily get to do. And so using short video clips, using text and comments within the platform, teachers can get support. They can share their work. Back when teachers were actually in classrooms, they could show something that was in their classroom. They could show their bulletin board or something really cool that students were doing. They could be on their couch reading a book and want to share a reflection that they have of a passage that they just read. And so really it's a platform that anytime, anywhere, teachers from all over the world are able to find other teachers like them who can help them and engage in conversations. And so that's really what EdSpace is. What has been really important for us from the jump is that EdSpace is about humans. It's about people. It's about seeing teachers as people. And as people, in order to thrive, in order to be effective professionally, it's about relationships and it's about community. And so that's what we're here to talk about today in the EdSpace slice of this session. I have two folks here who have been doing relationship work, community work on the ground for a while. And I'd like to briefly introduce them and then kind of let them chat for a bit as well. So Tamara Smith is an educator, an administrator, a district program leader who focuses on access and equity and cultural competence. And she is based in the school district of Palm Beach County. So wave, Tamara. And Marcus Struther, who is also a former educator, administrator, youth development specialist, formerly at Sacramento Public Schools, and who's now, as of, I think it's been a couple weeks, Marcus, you can correct me on this, now the new president and CEO of Mentor California. And so both of these folks, Tamara and Marcus, have been working with young people, working with adults, working in communities, and that's what we're here to chat about. So what I'd like to do, actually, Tamara, if you don't mind, can you just kind of give us a little bit of background on your work around cultural competence, around microaggressions, how you got into education, and kind of bring us up to now with what you're up to.
Hello, everyone. Michael, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here with everyone. So whenever we are talking about things that impact students, I get really excited. I have been an educator now for, this is my 16th year that I'm going into. And yes, I'm 25. Don't do any math. And so right now, I'm actually just wrapping up. Palm Beach County School District has already suffered COVID-related budget cuts. And so my position was actually eliminated effective last Tuesday. And so I'm not really sure what comes next at this point. Lots of kind of grassroots organizations that we work with, organizations that are here to advocate for various student groups are trying to see, what funding may exist to reinstate the position. So we're definitely at a crossroads of the unknown right now. But the work that I was doing up until last Tuesday was as a program planner for equity and access. And specifically, I was building courses and professional development for anyone that comes in contact with students, school bus drivers, cafeteria workers, custodians, because at the end of the day, everyone who has any sort of interactions with children, from the moment they leave their homes until they return home, they have an impact. And the more that we can teach people to have culturally responsive dealings with students, the better. And so my coursework dealt a lot with looking first at yourself and looking at your own biases and looking at your own experiences and how that colors and impacts how you do your job and how you do the work that you wake up to do for children. I always say that this work is a work where I think first of those who are well-intentioned. Because even if we put all blatantly racist people on a rocket ship to the moon, we would still have a lot of the issues that we see plaguing education today. And so I always approach the work, people are so quick to, take offense and become really guarded. And I think that the first thing that is important to realize is that we all have biases. We all, and some biases are good. They're a protection for us. I'm very biased about crossing busy streets. I know that, cars can kill me, but I also know that with the right training that a car is a vehicle that, I need in my everyday life. I look forward to teaching my children to drive. So it's important that when we look at our biases that we kind of think of it in the same ways, that some of our biases are there and they come from experiences that we've had, whether they're good, bad, or otherwise. And we just have to be willing to challenge ourselves constantly and be willing to continually make those adjustments that are going to make us our best selves for children.
That's great. Thanks so much, Tamara. Marcus, I want to jump over to you also just to kind of set the stage. Can you share a bit about how you got into this work and how you went from Sacktown Public Schools to Mentor and what that looks like?
Yeah, definitely appreciate it, Michael. It's great to see everybody. My computer keeps jumping into speaker view, and I don't want to view myself that closely, uh, which is okay. So yeah, spent 22 years, and I say spent because as of a couple weeks ago, as Michael stated, took on this position as president and CEO of Mentor California, but spent 22 years in public education, 8 years as a classroom teacher, 9 years as a high school principal, and these last 5 years as district director of youth development for Sac City Unified School District. You know, and for me, one of the things that jumped out, especially when I became an administrator, was really understanding that oftentimes we spend a lot of time programming for young people. How do we create programs that will make sure that our youth have what they need, whether it be mentoring programs, whether it be, you know, bullying prevention, whether it be STEM programs. And what I found was oftentimes we were forgetting that as much as we need to care for those that are being educated, we need to care about those that are doing the educating. And our teachers were not getting that same love. Our adults were not getting that same love. Mm-hmm. And you know what has stood out to me often is that we don't recognize that although, you know, I'm 45 years old, but I can tell you right now that 35-year-old Marcus shows up, 25-year-old Marcus shows up, 15-year-old Marcus can show up if triggered in the right way, you know, and even to, you know, 10-year-old Marcus, if my dad comes around and I can tell he's upset, little Marcus will show up. And I think we often see that in our teachers. We often don't support our teachers through that work. And, you know, for whatever reason, we have found ways to really almost ignore the mental health of the adults that are in this space. So one of the things that I really tried to do was partner with the right folks to be able to figure out what are some ways that we can create health and healing strategies for the adults that work with young people. And through this work, I've been able to partner with the Campaign for Black Male Achievement out of New York. I've been able to partner here with the California Endowment. And then also Oakland Unified, if you all know Chris Chapman in the African American Male Achievement Program. Chris and I really dove deep into how do we really get to a space where we can provide what is needed for our adults. You know, and Chris, bless his heart, both of us have left our districts, and Chris is now leading the Kingmakers of Oakland, which is an amazing program. I encourage you to go check them out, but we are continuing to do this work with each other. Dr. Phyllis Hubbard was the doctor that is still working with us. If you go to the Campaign for Black Male Achievement's website, you will be able to download our report, Journey to Radiance, which is all about the different health and healing strategies that can be used. And we have really pushed ourselves into a space where we've tried to get folks to rethink how they work with adults. If you're taking your adults on a retreat, please don't push them into a space where it's just another meeting in a different room. If you're taking them on a retreat for real, take them somewhere and let them go get their toes done, or get a massage, or get in a swimming pool and relax and fellowship with each other and be able to share stories. I'm a Freedom Rider teacher. I've been working with Aaron Gruwell for over 16 years. If you have seen the Freedom Riders movie, and that is one of the things that we try to push into folks constantly, is that everybody has a story. And I think we forget that when people pass 21. Like, oh, you're 21, your story no longer matters, and that is not true. So as much as I can get my folks into a space where we can go and we can fellowship and be together, we do that. We have, you know, from little things to buying water bottles, to buying plants that will breathe in their space, to taking walks. So after every meeting, when we're having lunch, we take our 5-minute walk before we start any other discussion, just so we can get to a place where we're healthy and we feel like we can be healed. So just continuing to move in that space. What I found is that public education is not ready to necessarily do that. And I found myself 22 years later figuring out, how can I step away from education and step back in a way where I don't feel like my hands are tied. And if you know Mentor National out of Boston, Massachusetts, our CEO, David Shapiro, doing amazing work. We have 23 other affiliates in states throughout the country. And Mentor California is our newest. And I'm excited to lead this work, to be able to, one, work with young people, but also work with our adults, and really provide a covenant Outside of commitment and recruitment, we are really trying to transform mentoring into a covenant where people understand the importance of taking on a second family, because the young people that you work with or the adults that you mentor are going to become family to you. They should become family to you. And if you lead with love, you know, everything will work its way to a space where young people can thrive, adults can thrive, and we can continue to create a community of thriving throughout. So that's where I am right now, Michael. Hopefully I've said enough, but please feel free. Essential questions, throw them at us. And I'm sure myself and Tamara would be able to answer.
No, you answered a few of them already, which is great. And also you answered a few of my questions already. So I want to, both of you said things that I think are critical for this moment. One of the important things for this conversation, I think, is that it's not detached from the moment that we're in, that it's not detached from the fact that there is still a pandemic happening in major ways, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. And as well, social injustice and racial demonstrations in all over the country, frankly, are happening as well. And so, Tamara, I want to kind of jump with you. You mentioned, you know, we all have biases, and that part of your work was aimed at helping everybody who comes into contact with young people to sort of check those biases, to have culturally responsive dealings in healthy and safe ways. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the role that relationships play in that work. So for example, you know, there are going to be people who come to a training of yours or who interact with you in your work that you have not necessarily met before. But can you talk a bit about the importance of, of relationships, of actually having some foundation set before having some of these conversations that, frankly, for many people, many white people in particular, haven't had at all?
Mm-hmm. So one book that, and this is going to be so controversial, but one book that I find that I really encourage people to read who are interested in examining their own biases and, looking at some of the ways that they have traditionally thought about things, whether it's in their personal life or in their professional life. Of course, when we're talking about dealing with students, those things come together in ways that, can be tragic for some kids. And so I encourage people to read the book White Fragility. It talks a lot about how those who are learning experience being taught about the nature of microaggressions, micro-invalidations, and micro-insults. Those things, scholars refer to it as a death by 1,000 cuts. These little insidious things that that adults, students, teachers, that people of color, and that many marginalized groups, whether we're talking about immigrant populations, or we're talking about ELL students, or we're talking about Black and Brown students, or we're talking about transgender students, and the list goes on and on and on. Students that they're asked questions that are inappropriate. They're given these kind of backhanded compliments that where they scarcely understand, like, should I be offended by that? Like wait, what do you mean I speak well for a, like what? And so when we, thank you for linking that, I see that there in the comments, thank you. And so when we think about microaggressions, and I think that microaggressions is such a great starting point for thinking about and rethinking, because as I put together presentations and, tried to find examples and things of that sort, and activities for some of these presentations that I was teaching, I found myself having to turn the mirror on myself about things that I've said and done, and where it comes from, because that's really the underlying problem, is that, even something as simple as hair, things that we think are typical for hair, I had such a conflict with myself today thinking about how to wear my hair for this meeting. You know, do I leave it out? Do I tame it? You know, and I can't tell you how many times in my life I've had conversations about, you know, professional hair, what's appropriate for presenting. You know, these are things that we don't think a lot about it, but when you think about the underlying deep rooted racism that is inherent in these basic tenets that we hold about what's professional, even you know, when I speak at conferences or when I speak in front of other educators, or as an assistant principal when I would present to teachers, people would always ask about my accent. You know, and you've never met people more proud to be where they're from than New Yorkers. So I never felt offended by it, but when I think back on it, I'm like, no one asked, you know, Sarah about her accent. But my accent, you know, I've been sent to accent reduction classes in a professional capacity. Yeah, I see that look, Elise. Yes. Yeah.
That hurts me.
It's wild.
Yeah. I was 19. I was working for JP Morgan. And when I think back on it, I'm just like, wow, you know, wow. And it's funny, in my cohort, so I was one of the only local students that was hired. Everyone was from somewhere else, but I was the only one who was sent to accent reduction classes in a New York-based firm as a New Yorker. But I was also one of the only Blacks in the entire group. And, you know, so when I think about that, you know, and I didn't think anything of it then. It seemed, you know, normal, or being given compliments about being articulate, or, you know, being, you know, these are things that the kids deal with all the time. And then we wonder why their engagement level, you know, just steadily decreases the more interactions they have of this sort. So, you know, a lot of the work that I'm doing is about minimizing and encouraging people to do that work of self-reflection. Here in Palm Beach County, we were using a lot of the premise of Courageous Conversations by Glenn Singleton. And in that, one of the first things that he advocates is for people to do a self-reflection, you know, to take stock of you know, the things that make you you, and to think about your own intersectionality, to think about the layers of yourself that kind of color your interactions with others. And when you do that, you know, you'll have some moments of realizing that there's a lot of work to be done in all of us. And so that's kind of, you know, my thing that I think about as I challenge people to think about their relationships, and to think about the relationships that they have with students, and the relationships that they have even with their peers. When we look at the attrition rate with teachers of color, it's abysmal, you know, and it's because they, you know, they see what happens with the students, number one. And, you know, I've been in schools where I've seen students of color, you know, inherently treated like they were less than, you know, where they're constantly being asked to check their culture at the door, to check their language at the door, to be someone that they're not linguistically, and, you know, what that means for them in a way that, you know, we don't expect of students of other races. You know, the way that we marginalize, you know, family involvement from them, the way that you could just go on and on and on. And so when you look at, you know, how all of these relationships kind of come together and where they intersect, you know, and especially in today's climate, and in looking at virtual instruction, you know, I've been an administrator that's had to, you know, pop into some classrooms to provide support, and I'm horrified at some of the things that I hear teachers say to students who are really doing their best. whether they're demanding that they turn their cameras on, and you just don't know what, even the moderator today, I thought that he handled that so well in requesting people to turn on their cameras, but also respecting that, you're inviting people into your space in a way that is unprecedented. And, some students, they have things going on at home that, whether their parents are controlling those dynamics and they don't want their camera on, or students, find themselves in humiliating positions, or, so we really, really, really have to do that work of thinking about those relationships and exploring our biases in a way that is going to really impact students.
For sure. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think there's something about reflection that doesn't get enough attention, whether it's even just reflecting by yourself on yourself, or whether it is with other people, and sort of sharing about what you're working on, what you're thinking about, how you perceive a certain thing, and getting feedback from others. That seems super critical. Marcus, one of the things that I think you mentioned earlier about supporting the adults, I'm curious to hear how and if technology plays a role in that, and the ways in which, especially now during COVID-19 time, how you might use technology to help sort of strengthen, build, support some of the relationships that are critical for young people and for adults.
Yeah, great question, Michael. One thing I'm going to say is I'm learning in, getting used to speaking all over the place. Hopefully someone's saving these chat questions or remarks, because I want to engage with folks who are sending messages, but I also want to be responsive to the people talking. So if I didn't respond to your chat yet, I will plan to get back to that at some point. So I just want to throw that out. Just in terms of technology, and I'm going to put Elise on blast a little bit as I say this, her and I are a part of a group, who have been supporting each other through this pandemic for, I would say, at least a couple months. Would you agree, Elise? Just being in the space of being, challenging each other intellectually, but then also having fun and creating our own verses, like what singing group is better than the other singing group, just to be able to have, some discussion that's fun and allows us to be in a good space. One of the things though that I'll say with young people is that as adults, we have to understand that, Zoom and Google Meet and all of those things are great. But as adults, I know I'm zoomed out on many occasions, and trying to figure out how do you become culturally relevant through technology. And what that looks like for us on the mentor side in many ways is Fortnite. I'll use that as an example. And jumping on with young people and playing Fortnite if you have the capability to be able to do that. And I'm using Fortnite as one example. I'm sure there's others. But, I have twin 15-year-old boys who are all into Fortnite and work, alongside many of the young people that I work with. And being able to be in a space and as adults, be able to offer young people the opportunity to be authentically themselves while playing Fortnite, which means that you may hear some things that you don't necessarily want to hear, or experience some things during that time that might be a little unusual, but it offers you the opportunity to, one, step into their space and see their world, but then, be very intentional with some of the questions that you try to push into the space while you're playing Fortnite. And I, in no way, am ever playing Fortnite. I am just walking around the screen because I'm horrible at that game. So let me say that out loud. If you're not good at the game, we can all not be good at the game together, but we get to engage with young people. And the last piece that I'll share, just because of time, is, I also have a group called Everyman Sacramento. And it's just an opportunity, again, I think Elise knows this about me, just really trying to dive into the divine masculinity of us as men. And how do we, as men, we are emotionally illiterate, and trying to figure out how we can get to a better space and be able to love on each other as men, be able to tell each other we love each other, be able to hold each other during space. I got two gentlemen who just had a baby and are freaking out. And, what all of that looks like, and helping them understand that, the emotions you are feeling, all of us as men who are daddies have felt those emotions. So let's talk through that. And we've been doing Zoom calls. We have GroupMe, which we use just to send articles, just to shout out, just to shoot videos, just for us to watch. So, you know, there's an interesting space in that, you know, and with Tim, you know, Jones, who was spoken about earlier, and Dr. Chris Emden, you know, through the hip hop ed chats and all of that, like we are working as hard as we possibly can to try to be creative through this time, understanding that it doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon.
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I'm happy to hear that you have as you said, Everyman Sacramento. So good. Yeah, there's I think a book that I probably shared with you that you've already read. This kind of concept, entire conversation around masculinity, I think is something that's super important now also. And for the sake of time, first I want to say thanks to everyone for being here. If you, Carla, you could jump to slide 8, I believe. So here is contact information for Elise and me. If you want to take a quick screenshot of that, if you have an email question or you want to holler at us on Twitter. We still have time left, so what we're going to do is I am going to create a separate Zoom link for anybody who has questions about EdSpace, questions for Tamara, Marcus, or myself. You can jump into the Zoom link that I'm pasting into the comments right now. If you have questions for Elise and Josh, you can stay right where you are and not go anywhere. And so at this point, Marcus, Tamara, and I are going to jump out. We're going to hit that link, and we'll see you over there. Chris, Elliot, Carlos, all y'all, thank you so much. And we'll see how this goes. We're going to jump out of here, though.
I think it should work.
We're going to find out.
I mean, it's hard to mess this up, but I've messed it up before. So anyone who's hanging out with Josh and I for a few more minutes, we can answer questions either specifically about Real World Scholars and the work that we do, or about GimKit and Josh's journey. And I just think if you want to chime in, you should unmute and do it. Such a great lineup.
Hi, Josh. My name's Keith. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Great. It was really great to hear about your much more than a project. It's turned into your life, which is really inspiring. So I'm wondering though, when you were introduced, they said there was a new venture that you were interested in, or I thought I heard that, maybe not, but I didn't hear you speak to that. So if you have a new venture, I'd be interested in knowing what that is.
Introduced to what?
A new idea.
Oh,
Did you?
I think probably what I was talking about is when you posted a picture, Josh, from your classroom when you guys were running the marketing business, and you posted a picture of like your original idea for GimKit, and you said, this was the day that GimKit was born. That was the new idea. But I think that was probably a few years ago.
Yep. Exactly.
How many years have you been running it now?
Let's see.
When did you found it, rather?
Let's say so this is going to 4th year, I guess. 4th year.
Josh, I'd love to hear more about it.
Oh, sure. So, are you familiar with Kahoot?
Yes.
Okay. So it's in that same space. So it's a game show for your classroom. And kind of the way that it works is it's self-paced. So students go at their own pace instead of with Kahoot, how you kind of control the pace. And questions show up on student screens. And if they get a question correct, then they earn a bit of in-game cash. If they get a question incorrect, they lose a bit of in-game cash. And what they can do then is actually use that cash that they earn in-game to reinvest and purchase upgrades and power-ups. So you can buy upgrades that allow you to earn more money per question. You can buy insurance. You can buy multipliers. And you can also buy power-ups that are kind of just there for fun. Some are strategic. So you can like freeze another student for 15 seconds. So like if you're familiar with Mario Kart, a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And students just try to earn basically as much money as they can. And there's a couple of different game modes, but that's kind of the core part of the gameplay.
Thank you. Sounds like fun.
Thank you.
Josh, you mentioned that you found a mentor early on in your process, and I was kind of just curious about that, how that came about, what that relationship has looked like for you, and like how you feel like it's been beneficial.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a really good story actually. So basically my entire time since I've launched GimKit, I've only publicly like shared it in 2 places. And that has been on Reddit, on the teacher subreddit, and then also on a site called Product 10. And Product 10 is a little more like tech focused community. And it's when people make new products, they share it. And then Product 10 features a couple new products a day. So you can go to that site and kind of just explore what people have been making. So luckily, the 2 places I posted it to have been definitely well worth it, because from Product 10, I found my mentor, and then from Reddit, the first group of teachers started using it, and it's just grown from word of mouth since then. And so from Product 10, I posted it the first day that I launched it. It was actually like the day before Halloween, so I was like dressed up in my Halloween costume at school. I think I actually had a call with someone from Big Picture that day, like maybe Jeff or something like that. But anyway, so someone on, I posted there, and someone left a comment. His name was actually also Jeff, and just like a suggestion. And then maybe about 2-3 weeks later, he kind of reaches out over email. I guess he found out that I lived in Issaquah. He lives in Seattle, and he's like, "Hey, I think it's really cool what you're doing. If you need any help, let me know. I'd love to be a resource." So we kind of ended up connecting. I didn't think much would come of it, but he basically just mentored me for like a year for completely free, just because he was really into kind of helping students. And he ran his own small business. Actually, it's a little ironic, small business marketing company. And so he kind of knew a lot more about the business stuff, which I no experience and no clue what I was doing. And kind of when I first launched it, I wanted to share it with as many people as I could. And he gave me some great advice, which was to slow down and to actually focus on getting great feedback from the people that were using it, and use that to make it a bit better. And actually, I didn't talk about this obviously with one of my hardest challenges, but the first like 6-7 months after launching GimKit, it was definitely hard for me to just be okay with where it was at. It was growing incredibly slowly. Almost nobody was using it. And I was just making improvements to something that almost nobody was using. But it was certainly worth it, because I had been working on GimKit for 5-6 months at the time. It was very immature. And without that, I would have shared something that wasn't quite ready. So anyway, he helped me like conduct interviews over the phone with teachers. And we kind of together like created a good first group of teachers that we had like this great feedback cycle going on. And things started getting busier and busier, and eventually I needed some help. And so the discussions lasted a while, but he came on last January, so he's been here a little over a year now, and him and I work on it full time. He basically runs the business side of things, and I run like the product side of things. But yeah, just his business expertise to kind of help me navigate that has been super helpful.
I love that. I think, obviously the entrepreneurial journey is very personal, but we don't have to learn all of the lessons the hard way. And I know I have greatly benefited from the mentors. I feel like I have like a lot of older siblings, Chris Jackson being one of them, people who just like nudge me in the right direction. Yeah, I said older siblings. I did. He hates it. And so often, there are learnings to be shared, and even in talking to you the other day about your business and the journey, it feels like you actually haven't made a ton of giant mistakes. There haven't been these big kind of pitfalls where you kind of had to start over. And I kind of wonder if that is in part because you've had, a lot of preparation and a lot of practice and a lot of mentorship with, with folks who could kind of, the relationships needed to work you through that process, more gracefully. I don't know. I will mute so if anyone else wants to jump in, because I could do this all day.
Let me please jump in, because I need to make a quick announcement, and then Elise asked me private chat if this was still open. There's nothing following this session, so if people want to keep talking, that's what this room is for. I will say, I'd made an announcement at the beginning. Would love people to come to the B-side session tonight because it's student run and it's international. So it's way up in the chat now, but I'll drop it again, a link to that Zoom room that you'll need to copy and paste for later. And it has a password attached to it, which is the only types of sessions we do. So that password is movie, pretty simple, movie. So I'll put the link in the chat in a moment. The other thing I'll say is that I've also had the pleasure of knowing Josh for I think about 4 years now, which is great. And I'm glad that you're getting marketing help. One of the things they might teach you is say your website as much as you can. I love Josh's website. I don't know that I've heard it in this. Maybe I just wasn't listening. Gimkit.com. Gimkit.com. It's so great. I love it, Josh.
Yeah, GIMKIT.
That's right.
Thanks, Chris.
You bet.
It's in the chat.
And there's the link.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, Chris. Well, I'll say this, we can keep going, but I did ask Josh for some period of, like some chunk of time that probably shouldn't go on forever. And so if folks have any more questions, we can ask them. If not, then I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. I think Josh and I can hang out for a bit. You got such a cool background, Josh.
Thanks. It's just some of the default ones. I can, here, I got this one too. That's better.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I recently saw a bat eating a banana, and I thought that could be a good option for me. It's very cute, for the record. Very, very cute.
I just went to the website and it says I should enter game code.
Oh, yeah, you probably clicked join game. So that's if you just go to the main site, gimkit.com, and it'll tell you a little bit more about the game. The page that you're on right now is when students are joining a game. Teachers kind of give them a game code so they can join the game.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem.
I guess I have just a basic question about real world scholars in general, and that's like, what's the first step? If I want to connect my,
Yep.
My
our website.
List, what do we do?
Yep, you head to our website. Our applications are currently open for the next school year, and so if you fill out an application, I can't remember exactly what kinds of questions, like what questions are on it, but the general ballpark will be asking kind of what you teach and what you're envisioning. And we work with lots of different classrooms that have various situations. Some teachers come to us with a project that could easily kind of get morphed into a business, and some teachers come with a very open, they want to figure it out on the, with their students on day one. And so we kind of have some various space and grace for that, but we do ask for some details. And so if you head to our website, I think applications are available online and they're rolling. So while we don't have an official deadline, we're kind of giving away money until we're done until we're out of money. So.
All right. Well, 6 years.
Go ahead. Say again.
6 years doing this is remarkable.
Thank you. It
really
is.
Really
been a wild journey. One thing I didn't say, because every time I get on a Zoom call and I have to start talking, I get flustered, no matter who and what I'm talking about. What I didn't say was so many of these years have been kind of side by side with big picture learning. And I really feel like the big picture community has really guided so much of our own understanding of what the work should look like. They've been incredible friends and thought partners and kind of guinea pigs. The work has morphed so much over the last 6 years in a way that kind of has made it, it's grown up, and we've been really just super grateful for people this community of people who've been willing to kind of go through this messy process with us. And so it's easy to brag about because it's not really any of our work, we just built a thing and give students some resources to make it happen, and they go in all these different directions, and it's really rad to watch.
Well, it's the right work. Thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for joining me.
Nice to meet you. See you, Chris.
Chris, thanks for inviting us to do this. Really appreciate you.
It was great.
Chris.
So is Josh still there?
I am.
Okay, so I came to this late, so I don't know the whole gist of what's happening. It's just that I'm a teacher and I use Gimkit all the time. And I had no idea it was created by someone your age. And I'm huge on coding and teaching my kids to code. And I'm just a science teacher. But I will be telling them all about you, and we will be studying you because we love it. We use it all the time, and had no idea it was such a young company, and had no idea it was done by someone so young. So rock on! That is awesome. You've
Oh,
changed
thank
our
you.
world.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Huge learning platform. You've changed us. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it. That's awesome.
Josh, I feel very inspired to have listened to you. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to go. See you later, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Friend. So sorry. I'm so sorry.
Anything goes after 5 o'clock, it's fine.
Sure. Also, I got an Amazon delivery as I was talking. You know, there was like the loud like burp burp, and all of the sound distractions are going to happen while you're being recorded, obviously.
Can I do an informal survey? Has anybody in the room been to any other sessions today? Elise, what'd you go to?
I was there for probably 11 o'clock.
Okay. Carrie's?
I came to the welcome and then this, which I don't know if it's counting or not, but yeah.
Good. I'm just curious. I mean, we've never done anything like this before. Does it seem like it's working? Are you getting communications from us that are helpful?
I felt like the email this morning with the things that I had registered for was really helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, that helped me as well. It's nice to have like a little agenda for the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think when it's in your email, I don't have to go looking for it. I don't have to go to like the app that was down, you know, like that's just another thing that I may or may not remember, you know, and so the fact that it's delivered to my email address makes it very easy.
And I know you were joking earlier about me pressing you to like register, but that's part of it. We build all these infrastructure out that's sort of tied to that registration process.
Totally.
But yeah, good.
No, it makes sense that you were pressuring me to register. No. And that you're being a bully.
And can I ask Liz Boyles, I saw you nodding your head. Was there something that was useful for you?
Well, I'm new to Big Picture, so it's good for me to listen to everybody talk about all the different things. So yeah, and all the acknowledgement and everything else that I've had in email have been really helpful. So
good.
Yeah, so much appreciated.
All right,
and I'd like to say actually, Josh, I think you're amazing. So I've learned a lot this evening already. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz.
Awesome. Well, I think we can probably wrap it up. Josh, again, thank you so much. Thanks also just for being, I think, a constant source of like inspiration and rootedness. You know, I think I'm learning things as I hear you reflect on your journey, which I'm not surprised by, but I'm also always heartened by. So thank you for sharing. And Chris, again, thank you for inviting us, the Rural Scholars team and the EdSpace team to share this space. And thank you for everyone who came and participated. It was really great to have such a discussion. Sometimes things aren't discussions on these Zoom black holes. So I'm grateful.
Yeah, it's funny. Earlier when Marcus said, I'm so tired of Zoom meetings, I was like, it's day 1 of 12.
Oh, it's 12
but
days.
I get it. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Will I be able to see the recording of this?
We are recording everything. We're not exactly sure where we'll put it and what it will look like. A lot of them, I think, we'll try to do some sort of editing. So like, you're not seeing like 5 minutes of us fiddling with tech at the beginning, but eventually, Brent, if that's a good enough answer for you, the answer is eventually, but thanks.
It was a little glitchy for me figuring out how to actually get into the sessions. So it was just a learning curve for me, but I'm a Big Picture fan.
Thank you. All right, we'll see everyone at 11 Eastern.
Be there.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks.